Hi, welcome to this episode of our podcast. I'm Mary Abazia, and of course, with me is Tom Spitali and Sean Wellham. And we are always curious about things that are happening. And one that really caught our eye was actually the headline was that food company CEOs are contacting the CEO of the maker Ozempic, Novo, to find out really when it's all happening because they're afraid that it's going to impact their business. If you're in the snack food industry or sugar or other types of food industries at a minimum, but even broader than that, this is going to have a huge ripple effect. So we think it's an interesting trend that we're going to kind of dive into and see what nuggets you might come from this.
And
So
Mary, do you want to talk about what Ozempic is for those? I mean, I think a lot of people do, but it's not as widely known outside the US, I think, yet. And so do you want to talk a little bit about what it's doing?
yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
I can. It was like many blockbuster pharmaceuticals, it was originally researched to do something different than weight loss. It was a diabetes drug. It's based on the venom of lizards, of all things. And it has been found to have an incredible weight loss impact on people who are injecting it. And I guess right now, primarily that's people with diabetes, but the method of action, I guess, of the drug is that we all have certain reactions, kind of Pavlovian reactions when we see food. And what Ozempic does is it sort of tamps down that reaction, makes you not feel so hungry or want to eat automatically when you see food. And the impact is that people are losing significant amounts of healthy weight without any significant side effects. So this is looking like the real deal here.
Yeah. So, Sean, well, I'm going to just say my friend Dimitri, I love Dimitri. I play pickleball with him, and he started on it. He's lost over 25 pounds. And it was interesting when he started saying, I had to go out and buy new shirts. He had bought 10 new shirts, and then he has some nice watches. He said I had to resize my watches. So, that ripple effect that I was talking about, you read about it, but then you see it firsthand with your friends and family, and you're like, wow. Okay. So Sean, will you talk about the types of trends and how this fits into that?
Sure, sure. It's interesting though that the impact, any trend, we'll talk about trends in a minute, but any trend has a knock-on effect. And it's kind of funny that what's bad news for the snack food companies maybe, or the high sugar fizzy drink companies and so forth, is good news for the clothing retailers, right? Because everyone's going to have to get a whole new wardrobe in the new slim size. And I guess before I talk about trends, the other interesting thing, the closest analogy I could think of from my personal experience was smoking cessation, particularly with nicotine replacement therapy in patches. Because if you think of obesity, which is obviously a global problem, is driven in part by habit. You get bad habits in terms of when you eat and what you eat and the types of food you eat. But also there's this, for many people, a sort of addiction that you're feeding, a sort of chemical signal that your body is saying to eat and consume. And we know that those two things working together are really hard to break. And in smoking, you have the nicotine addiction plus the habit of lighting up maybe after a meal or with a drink or a beer or some other trigger. And I just think this is a fascinating analogy of how they're trying to separate both the addiction, the hormonal drive to consume, also with the habit. And I wonder how it will play out. How it will evolve and how it will last. Will it last? Essentially, and that's the essence of a trend. Trends come. They can be the seasonal trends. We all know that we have certain festivals and holidays throughout the year in different cultures, and certain things will sell more during that period. We know that summer things such as barbecues and outdoor type of activities sell more in the summer and so on. We can have trends that are more cyclical, like the economic trends. You know, we're in boom times versus recession. We know those goes over a long cycle, more than a year. But interestingly, we've also got one of those secular trends, and these are game changing, permanent shifts in the reality that we all understand. You can think about the economic growth of China over the past 20 years is a secular trend. It's not going away. It's a new reality, and it will only continue. And I guess this, to me, sounds a lot like a secular trend, that if we can find a way of addressing the global issue of obesity, then the knock-on effect of that is going to be huge, both in terms of subsequent diseases, the drop in strokes, heart attacks, cardiovascular issues, but also the impact on other industries such as snack food versus clothes versus lifestyle versus activity. You know, the whole thing is one of those trends that changes the game permanently and forever. So it's an interesting moment in history, I
Well,
guess.
why I also like this is I feel like, we're very thoughtful working with our clients about what trends are impacting them. And we, have our tools, our planning assumption tools where people plot different trends. And, if you were in the medical device industry and you were doing bariatrics, you probably would have that somewhere in your trend analysis. You'd have it, highly impactful, but highly unlikely, to have the magic pill or a shot. But if you are in oil and gas, you wouldn't even think about putting that on your trend analysis. And yet, United Airlines did an analysis and said that they can save over $80 million a year on fuel if everyone loses 10 pounds. So, so, I mean, can you imagine being in a planning session and having that? Your boss would look at you and go, "No, come on, really." But that's where even now, when we're working on termite control or breast implants or face, you're going to have some of those types of planning assumptions on there because they could impact your business, even as far-reaching as it seems.
And
I think you
amazingly
highlight
enough, it's not far-fetched, Sean. I just a quick tidbit. I just read that somewhere around 40%. I don't know if this was a solid number, but something like close to 40% of the U.S. struggles with obesity. I guess meaning that up to 40% of Americans are at that 25 BMI, limit or above body mass index. And so the idea that on average everybody loses 10 pounds is flying on a plane is not that far-fetched. The impacts could be great. Sorry, Sean, go ahead. What were you
yeah.
going to say?
I was just thinking to Mary's point, how hard it is to think of all of the consequences because they interplay. It's almost like a very chaotic system. I was thinking this because people were talking a lot recently about how AI will change the world and is it an existential threat and all the other big interesting stories about AI. And what we're trying to do there is think of the consequence of it and how it will impact and what the impact of those impacts would be. It's kind of like a pinball machine. And it's the same with anything like weight loss drugs. We can think through the obvious. Hey, we lose weight, we get healthier, we have less strokes, we have less heart attacks, we have more healthy people. Well, that impacts all the specialist physicians that deal with strokes and cardio issues. They're going to have a supply side problem, which we would see as a good thing for humanity, but for a particular industry or specialty, it's a problem. People will live longer, assuming that they don't fall to these diseases. Then that puts a different stress onto social security, whatever your particular country has. Most countries have support for seniors, and that might be from pensions to medical assistance. And that all of a sudden is going to have more people, and you're going to have the demographic shift where people are retiring and not working, supported by fewer people who are working. And that has an economic effect. And that then affects immigration. We now need to bring people in to help us with our needs and so on and so on. And by the time you give it just a moment's thought, you realize that it is actually unpredictable. And it requires, I know, Tom, you've talked a lot about putting out tripwires and having your heads up looking for the impacts. You can't think so far ahead. It's too chaotic, but you've got to be thinking and watching to plan your next move. You know, you can't anticipate everything. These sorts of trends change everything in ways you can't even imagine at this moment in time.
So very important to think about the specific impacts around your industry, right? What could happen? And yeah, it's hard, but you know, it's hard to think that far ahead, but you really need to kind of to do something, get some of your best creative thinkers around and try to anticipate the different scenarios that could play out. One of the things that I find super interesting that I think will be maybe a shorter term ramification is, you know, how widespread will the use of Ozempic be? Like right now, it's like we said earlier, it's towards people that prescribed to people that have diabetes, but you know, the side effect profile seems pretty tame and pretty manageable, you know. So eventually the consideration will be, are we going to make this something that's widely reimbursable, right? Will the health insurers of the world begin looking at this as an opportunity to basically maybe invest in reimbursing a particular pharmaceutical that might save lots of costs down the road? You know, I'm just that'll be interesting. What do you guys think is going to happen there?
It's interesting whether you've got a profit motive or a public health motive.
I was
And I
just
think
thinking
both
as a
exist.
segmentation in insurance.
Yeah, I mean, you've got take in my country, we have a national health service. Their intention is to provide maximum outcomes for the minimum cost, you know, effectiveness for cost. So if you could argue to the National Health Service, this drug will reduce instance of stroke and blah blah blah, and that net will save money and keep people healthier, then they would logically say, let's make that available for free to people. Let's make it a prescribed drug for free or for a prescription charge. If you have a more for-profit healthcare system, then insurance companies might be looking at that. They don't necessarily want to have a reduction in conditions because that's going to lead to a reduction in premiums, right? It's a slightly different thing. So I guess I don't know enough other than if you're looking at it from a profit-centered mindset, how will this affect the model versus how will this affect public health? You might find different answers. I don't know.
Yeah. It, this is going to sound weird, but I think we need to ask AI, what are the implications? You know, you could have a planning session and come in with, you know, because you really, depending on how you prompt it, you could come up with some pretty interesting scenarios that then you should wrestle to the ground with your creative thinkers and come up with some game plans because there may be some opportunities. You know, if I'm a clothing company, I have huge opportunities to have some very interesting promotions now.
Yeah.
You know, or I'm going to be in trouble if I'm, you know, Frito-Lay. I need to be thinking about what other types of things I can do besides, you know, or Chipotle is reducing the sizes of their meals. So they'll have more of a European offering for people that are on this. So, you know, because they get filled up so quickly. So
Because what those companies want is a drug or a therapy that just stops you putting on the fat, that you could eat Krispy Kreme donuts all day long and not put weight on. That would be the ideal drug for the food companies, wouldn't it? It's like, no, you can eat this and it doesn't stick to you. It just leaves your body. So you have all the taste, none of the guilt. Whereas what this is more of an appetite suppressant by the sounds of it. It leaves you feeling fuller. So you don't want the bag of chips or the donut. Other donuts are available. I name checked Krispy Kreme because the other donuts are available.
But there's opportunity, and especially I think shorter term opportunity, maybe not immediately right now, but soon, as again awareness of Ozempic's efficacy grows, as the prescription basis of it grows. Because Walmart did a study that found that people who were on Ozempic spent less on food, but the same amount of money overall at Walmart, just on different things, lifestyle, fitness, and clothes, right? So whatever industry that you're in, I think in the short term, especially as this awareness begins to grow, what can you do proactively to tie in if there's an obvious tie-in with whatever you're offering? You know, what can you do to take advantage of that and partner You know, in a way, I don't know, maybe not necessarily directly with Ozempic, but realize that a lot of people that are going to be using the drug are going to be losing a lot of weight and be ready with some kind of an offer.
So is this bad news for Weight Watchers and the similar slimming clubs, or is this good news that they've now got a new tool in their armory? I wonder how that would affect those sort of
Yeah,
gyms
good.
and lifestyle
It
clubs.
just seems like they're like what Mary said earlier. You've got to kind of think about maybe diversifying a little bit, maybe making your offering maybe something a little bit different. Maybe it morphs a little bit more towards, you know, toning and being in shape than it does about the actual weight loss. Who knows? Again, we're a little bit ahead of ourselves, but that's our job. And
Yeah.
I would say that's the job of the people that are listening to this podcast as well, is on behalf of your company. You need to be in front of this thing and start to anticipate what the ramifications are going to be, because it looks like it's going to be big. And I hope it's going to be big.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and right now you can only get it in an injectable form, but they're working, I think Lilly's coming out with a pill soon. And, you know, once things move to pills, that even makes it more easy, you know, than ever to do things. So yeah, so this is just heating up, and we hope that you really think about your plan assumptions and invite really creative, you know, off the wall thinkers in for those sessions, because they're going to help you guys think about things in very different ways. So
All right. I'm going to go
good
and get a
luck.
hot dog while I still fancy one.
Yeah, yeah, and don't forget the donut too.
You
Thank
said
you very much
Kristen,
for joining us.
Thank you.
bye.